The God Debate 3. We watched the first part, and it was okay. You got to watch it to see their openings. But then the second part is where Sam Harris and William Lane Craig, I think, really went head-to-head, and Sam really smacked around his Christian worldview with ethics. If God doesn't exist, then there is no objective ethics, objective morality. And Sam is going at him hardcore. Let's continue where we left off and see how the remainder of this debate goes. Thank you for tuning in again and being part of my community. It means the world to me. We're in tough times. Sometimes, it's tough for me even to see so many people care, and to be active in this community means a ton. So thanks to all you who take the time to like and comment and subscribe and hit that bell. I really, really appreciate it. It gives me reason to wake up in the morning, and it sincerely helps a lot. So thank you. Let's see what happens.
A less moral framework than the one Dr. Craig is proposing, I haven't heard of it.
He literally... And Craig's face again, like we left off in the last video. If you haven't seen 1 and 2, they're in the description, but he leaves like a hard hit on Craig there.
Professor Craig now has 8 minutes for a rebuttal.
He's running to that podium.
Timekeeper, are you ready?
And let me guess, before he does this, let me guess. He's going to say something like, well, you'll notice that Sam never took the time to address my critiques when I said this and this and this, and Sam never addressed this and this and this, and he never did this and this, which is what he typically does to make you look like you lost the debate. He always does this. Damn, timekeeper, can you get with it?
Begin.
The less moral framework is atheism. Atheism has no grounds for objective moral values or duties. And it's interesting that in that last speech, I was disappointed to hear no defense given of that crucial second contention that I offered again.
Again, he does this in every debate. If you don't address his issue, his critiques, every issue he brings up, he acts like he won.
It's Dr. Harris's view. Remember, we talked about the value problem. I gave what I consider a knockdown argument to show that the moral landscape is not identical to the continuum of human flourishing. We talked about objective moral duties, the is versus ought distinction, the ought implies can problem. None of these have been responded to. So if you want a really desperate moral system, try atheism. There's no foundation for objective moral values and duties there. Now, what about theism? Does it do any better? Well, in the last speech, we heard some attacks on my first contention that God provides a sound foundation for morality. Unfortunately, it seems to be that most of these were red herrings. A red herring is a smelly old fish that's dragged across the path of the bloodhounds to distract them from their true quarry, so they get distracted and go off following the dead fish. And I'm not going to be distracted by the red herrings that were offered in that last speech. For example, in response to my claim that if God exists, then objective moral values exist, we heard that I haven't truly offered an alternative to his view, because the goal on theism is to avoid hell. Honestly, that simply shows how poorly Sam Harris understands Christianity. You don't believe in God to avoid going to hell.
You're damn right. You can say, oh, well, I want a relationship with God. That's why. It's a relationship thing. I want to have a bond with the Lord, the creator of the universe. But if you don't, how often does Craig talk about, it's better that you believe just in case your loving God would literally dangle that threat over your head? This is horseshit.
Belief in God isn't some kind of fire insurance.
Actually, he does make that a point often.
Believe in God because God, as the supreme good, is the appropriate object of adoration and love. He is goodness itself, to be desired for its own sake. And so the fulfillment of human existence is to be found in relation to God. It is because of who God is and his moral worth that he is worthy of worship. It has nothing to do with avoiding hell or promoting your own well-being. He then responds, but there's no...
I just don't buy that. I mean, how often is hell mentioned? More than heaven in the New Testament. It's mentioned more in the Quran than heaven. I mean, like, hell is a definite deterrent on not following and believing in other gods and coming to this one true God. That's it.
Good reason to believe that such a being exists. Look at the problem of evil and the problem of the unevangelized. Both of these, as I explained in my opening speech, are irrelevant in tonight's debate because I'm not arguing that God exists. Maybe he's right. Maybe these are insuperable objections to Christianity or to theism. It wouldn't affect either of my contentions that if God exists, then we have a sound foundation for moral values.
So notice that. If Sam and all his critiques and the negative shit he just said in the last video, in his follow-up, is right, it wouldn't mess anything up that William Lane Craig said, because still, objective moral values would still stand. If that's the debate that William Lane Craig is dying on this hill, that objective moral values still stand no matter what, that's all I care about. It doesn't matter that your objective moral values are insane and based on a warlord of a god, then you've lost the battle, my friend. Nobody wants that kind of objective moral value from such a tyrannical bullshit deity.
Duties. If God does not exist, then we have no foundation for objective moral values and duties.
I thought this is the God debate. I mean, he's like, all he cares about is that objective moral values exist, and if you're an atheist, then objective moral values can't exist. Doesn't matter how ridiculous my objective moral values sit on and what kind of objective, ridiculous God that is. Period. He just needs to make that point and he wins.
Duties. So these are red herrings. Now, I have written on each of these problems, the problem of evil and the problem of the unevangelized, and you can find much of what I've said at our website, reasonablefaith.org. If you're interested, go ahead and look at that. Or, as Michael Ray suggested, talk to one of your philosophy professors. Michael has written extensively on the problem of evil, and I'm sure he'd love to have a conversation with you about those things. Notice, secondly, I would want to say, evil actually proves that God exists. Because if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. If evil exists, then it follows that objective values and duties do exist. Namely, some things are evil. So evil actually proves the existence of God.
Oh my God. This is weird. It's like a weird presuppositionalist argument. Not saying he is, but I remember I was on a video with Jim Bob at one point. Jim Bob and Andrew Wilson. And we had this long dialogue. Neil from Gnostic Informant told me, hey man, let's just hang out. Two Christians, two skeptics, hanging out with Christians. I didn't know what kind of conversation we were getting into. I thought we were just hanging out. This is the same one that at the end Jay Dyer pops on after I'd been asking to get off for a couple hours and needed to eat. But I was already frustrated with the nonsensical questions. And Jim Bob said, I believe in miracles. And he's like, well, explain how logic and rationality exists. You know, if you can't ground that, if you can't prove that without using rationality, like he did this little weird circular thing that precepts do. And it's like, huh? So if evil exists in some objective manner based on what Sam's arguing, he does think it's like the worst. It's like, what is the best well-being? Well, what is the worst well-being? Well, you start with the worst well-being, and everything above that would be working upward toward the better, which would be good. And it's just very strange how if evil exists, therefore God must exist kind of argument. I don't know.
Since in the absence of God, good and evil as such would not exist. So you cannot press both the problem of evil and agree with my contention that if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist, because evil actually will be an argument for the existence of God. Notice that Dr. Harris has no moral foundation for saying that Christian beliefs are morally execrable because he has no foundation for making such a judgment.
Here we are. Tell me, am I wrong? That sounds like presuppositionalism.
If atheism is true, what objective foundation?
Or a form of it, like this stems from the same kind of, precept nonsense to me.
Is there for affirming that one view is execrable and another?
So ultimately, if you can show that you think that what the God portrayed in the Bible is evil, you've proven the God of the Bible, or you've proven a God exists because you've proven that objectively something could be evil or right. That somehow proves it? What the hell, man?
There's not. There's simply no basis for such judgments. So if he wants to have a debate on theism, I will happily engage in one with him, but that's not the debate for tonight. He also says it's psychopathic to believe these things. Now, that remark is just as stupid as it is insulting. It is absurd to think that people like Professor Peter Van Inwagen here at the University of Notre Dame is psychopathic, or that a guy like Dr. Tom Flint, who is as gracious a Christian gentleman as I could have ever met, is psychopathic. This is simply below the belt. So it seems to me that we've not been given any refutation of the view that if God does exist, then his essence, his character is determinative for the existence of objective moral values. What about objective moral duties? Here I explained that God's commands must be consistent with his nature. And Dr. Harris continues to press the point, but the Bible supports slavery. Again, I'll refer you to Professor Copan's book, which shows that is a gross misrepresentation of...
And critical scholars that I know, left and right, who study this issue, say Copan is obviously a gross representation of what the facts are based in the Bible. I mean, he's not laying it to you straight. He's finding apologetical ways in which to excuse the atrocities that we find in an ancient Bronze Age, really Iron Age text. It's crazy.
Ancient Israel, which did not, in fact, promote slavery as we understand it in light of the experience in the American South.
Notice the very specific thing he says there. Like, yeah, there's unique details, the racial aspect, the perpetual aspect to some degree. There are differences clearly between the slavery of the South, but like, that gets the deity that is being commanding these kind of acts within Israel off the hook. Slavery was fucking slavery, dude. It was bad. There was no good, yay, slavery ever. And the fact that God used that system or commanded that system is enough for any of us to sit here and see and go, nice try.
But again, that's simply not irrelevant because that isn't relevant because I'm not defending the Bible tonight. I'm saying that for a theist, whether Jew, Christian, deist, Hindu, moral duties will be grounded in the divine commands which are based in his nature. He says, but then what about people like the Taliban who say that God has commanded them to do certain atrocities? I would say the very same thing to the Taliban that Dr. Harris says, namely, God did not command you to do those things.
How do you know? Prove it. I mean, you grant that like you have special revelation through Scripture. They believe what they're feeling and what they're reading and what they're studying is God's word. Prove theirs isn't. I mean, you'd have to use all sorts of other argumentations to try and falsify Islam. And you know what? You could even argue from a moral standpoint. Sure, this is what Sam's doing, but I could do the same thing with Christianity and show you why I think Christianity is false. What are you doing?
That's exactly what Dr. Harris would say. The reason he thinks that is because he doesn't believe that God exists. But I would say that because I think that the Taliban has got the wrong God, that in fact God hasn't commanded them to commit these atrocities. And indeed, God will only issue such commands as are consistent with his moral nature and for which he has morally sufficient reasons. So I don't think this first contention is really in much dispute tonight. I think it's obvious that if God exists, then obviously objective moral values exist independently of human opinion. They're grounded in the character of God. And there would be objective moral duties if God exists, because our duties arise in response to the moral imperatives that God issues to us. So the real debate is on that second contention. Can atheism provide a good foundation for objective moral values and duties? And I think we've seen powerful reasons to think that it cannot.
Again, what do you mean by objective, right? Absolute. What do you mean? Again, seems like one needs that definition to tie into God or a metaphysical absolutist type position.
Dr. Harris now has 8 minutes. Timekeeper, are you ready? Begin.
Well, perhaps you've noticed Dr. Craig has a charming habit of summarizing his opponent's points in a way in which they were not actually given. So I will leave it to you to sort it out on YouTube. Needless to say, I didn't call those esteemed colleagues of his psychopaths, as I made clear. In any case, Dr. Craig has merely defined God as being intrinsically good. If you want to charge someone with merely semantic games, the shoe's on the other foot as well. There is no reason that I can see why there couldn't be an evil God, or several. Okay, but his God is intrinsically good. Goodness is grounded in his very nature. That is a definitional move that he's made. Now, I have presented a positive case for grounding an objective morality in the context of science. And thinking about moral truth in the context of science should only pose a problem for you if you imagine that a science of morality has to be absolutely self-justifying in a way that no science ever could be. Okay, every branch of science must rely on certain axiomatic assumptions, okay, certain core values. And a science of morality would be on the same footing as a science of medicine or physics or chemistry. You need only assume that the worst possible misery for everyone.
I like that. I mean, whether or not you dispute the details of his particular ethical framework, trying to make it grounded in some type of science, I like that, by the way. You have to assume that, like, beneath even science itself, you have to have some foundation in order for that to even be applicable. When you can just observe, test, experience, and be able to determine and have a social contract with other humans on what is the best for our well-being or not.
Everyone is bad and worth avoiding, and indeed the worst case scenario for conscious life. And if science is unscientific, if having a value assumption at the core renders science unscientific, what is scientific? Now, Dr. Craig is confused about what it means to speak with scientific objectivity about the human condition. He says things like, from the point of view of science, we're just constellations of atoms and we're no more valuable than rats or insects. Okay, as though the only scientifically objective thing that could be said about us is that we're constellations of atoms. Okay, there are two very different senses in which we use these terms subjective and objective. Okay, the first is epistemological. It relates to how we know. And when we say we're reasoning or thinking objectively in this sense, we're talking about the style in which we're thinking. We're talking about the fact that we're seeing through our biases. Which is to say, trying to jettison bias. We are reasoning in a way that's available to the data. Our minds are open to counter arguments. Now, this is the absolute foundation of science, and this is what opens such an invidious gulf between science and religion. The difference here in this approach to objectivity. But science does not require that we ignore the fact that certain facts are subjective, ontologically subjective. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are facts about the human condition that science can understand and study that are first-person facts about what it's like to be you. Okay, and we can study these facts, and our study of them reveals how much deeper and richer and more meaningful our lives are than the lives of cockroaches. Okay, so this is a false reductionism that he's purveying here. Now, so there are subjective facts. If you happen to have an intact nervous system, being burned alive will be excruciatingly painful. The painfulness of pain is a subjective fact about you. Okay, what my argument entails is that we can speak objectively about a certain class of subjective facts that go by the name of morality, that relate to questions of good and evil, and these depend on the well-being of conscious creatures. especially our own.
Interesting.
And by this light, we can see that it's possible to value the wrong things. I mean, if you think you prefer to be neurotic and in pain and incapable of creative work and completely disconnected from other people, there's something wrong with you. Okay. Objectively wrong with you? Yes. Okay. In that you are closed to higher states of consciousness. Higher with respect to what? Higher as in further from the lowest possible state of consciousness, the worst possible misery for everyone. Okay. Is the worst possible misery for everyone really bad? Once again, we have hit philosophical bedrock with the shovel of a stupid question. All right. Now, I want to take a brief moment to speak about these higher possibilities, because it's often thought that non-believers like myself are closed to some remarkable experiences that religious people have. That's not true. That's not true. There's nothing that prevents an atheist from experiencing self-transcending love and ecstasy and rapture and awe. There's nothing that prevents an atheist from going into a cave for a year like a proper mystic and doing nothing but meditate on compassion, say. What atheists don't tend to do is make unjustifiable and unjustified claims about the nature of the cosmos or about the divine origin of certain books on the basis of those experiences. Now, the prospect of somebody becoming a true saint in life and inspiring people long after their deaths is something that I take very seriously. I've spent a lot of time studying meditation with some very great, wise old yogis and Tibetan lamas who spent decades on retreat. Really remarkable people. Okay, people who I actually consider to be spiritual geniuses of a certain sort. And so I can well imagine if Jesus was a spiritual genius, a palpably non-neurotic and charismatic and wise person, I can well imagine the experience of his disciples. I can well imagine the kind of influence he could have on their lives. Okay, we do not have to presuppose anything on insufficient evidence in order to explore this higher terrain of human well-being. We don't have to take anything on faith. We don't have to lie to ourselves or to our children about the nature of reality. If we want to understand our situation in the world, along with these deeper possibilities, we have to do it in the spirit of science. Given that people have had these remarkable experiences in every context, while worshiping one God, while worshiping hundreds, while worshiping none, that proves that a deeper principle is at work. The sectarian claims of our various religions can't possibly be true in that context.
That makes sense. I have them all the time.
And all we have is human conversation to capture these possibilities. We can either have a first century conversation as dictated by the New Testament, or a 7th century conversation as dictated by the Quran, or a 21st century conversation that leaves us open to the full wealth of human learning. Please think about these things.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Harris is a very sharp, sober, clear thinker. And I really enjoy learning from him and hearing his take. I don't know if all the other atheists out there agree with him on his approach to ethics or morality. I know that he does try to ground it in some objective fashion. But I would love to hear from you. You probably have been around the block a time or two more than me and have seen what's going on in the ethical landscape of critical thinkers, maybe even actual ethicists you've studied. Please, in the comment section, fill me in. I obviously need to read his book, but do you see blind spots? What are your problems with his worldview? But also, clearly, what are the problems you see over there in William Lane Craig's worldview? For those of you smart people who watch this kind of stuff. We may get to Q&A. I'll probably get a sneak peek before I end up deciding whether or not I want to do a reaction to it, just to see if it's even worth it. Maybe you can tell me in the comments and spare me the time. But I sincerely appreciate all of you recommending these videos for me to react to, liking these videos, commenting and telling me what your thoughts are down below. Be sure to subscribe, check the bell, so that you're notified every time I drop a reaction. I really love all of you. It means the world to me to sit here and find so many people interested in rewatching some of these things that I've never seen. along with me. You're getting to experience it with me. Sorry, I was having a little trouble with my headphones during that reaction, but I truly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. And until next time, see you then.